that as children, we thought that, okay, these are children's stories, and we enjoyed them tremendously. And we heard them in Danish, and you heard them in English, or maybe some other language. But it's interesting also that as we got older, we also studied H.C.Anderson in school when we were 18, 19 years old, and that was interesting because suddenly there was a whole different layer of meaning to the stories that you discovered as an adult, so that's really cool. But anyway, we have I'm going to read the story, and then we have some people who's going to act it out, and just use your imagination like when you were kids.
Yeah. I don't like to be somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good. We're set. So many years ago, there was an emperor so exceedingly fond of new clothes that he spent all his money on being well dressed. He cared nothing about reviewing his soldiers, going to the theater, or going for a ride in his carriage except to show off his new clothes. He had a coat for every hour of the day, and instead of saying, as one might about any ruler, the king's in council, here in this town, they said, the emperor's in his dressing room. So in this great city where he lived, life was always merry. Every day, many strangers came to town, and among them, one day came two swindlers. They let it be known that they were weavers, and they said that they could weave the most magnificent fabrics imaginable. Not only were the colors and patterns uncommonly fine, but clothes made of this cloth had a wonderful way of becoming invisible to anyone who was unfit for his office and who was unusually stupid. Those would be just the clothes for me, thought the emperor. If I wore them, I would be able to discover which men in my empire are unfit for their posts, and I could tell the wise men from the fools. Yes, I certainly must get some of that stuff woven for me right away. And he paid the swindlers a large sum of money to start work at once. So they set up a loom, and they pretended to weave, though there was nothing on the loom. All the finest silk and the purest old thread which they had demanded from the king went into their traveling bags while they worked on empty looms far into the night. So the emperor thought, I'd like to know how those weavers are getting on with the cloth, but he felt slightly uncomfortable when he remembered that those who were unfit for their position would not be able to see the fabric. It couldn't have been that he doubted himself, yet he thought he'd rather send someone else to see how things were going. And the whole town knew about the cloth's peculiar power, and all were impatient to find out how stupid their neighbor was. I'll send my honest old minister to the weaver, the emperor decided. He'll be the best one to tell me how the materials look, because he's a sensible man and no one does his duty better. So the honest old minister went to the room where the two swindlers sat, working away on their empty looms. Heaven help me, he thought as his eyes flew wide open. I can't see anything at all, but he didn't say so. Both the swindlers begged him to be so kind as to come near to approve the excellent pattern, the beautiful colors, and they pointed to the empty loom, and the poor minister stared as hard as he dared. He couldn't see anything because there was nothing to see. Heaven have mercy, he thought, can I be a fool? I never guessed it, and not a soul must know. So, am I unfit to be the minister? It would never do to let it on that I cannot see the cloth. So one of the weavers said, don't hesitate to tell us what you think. And the old minister peered through the spectacles. Oh, it's beautiful, it's enchanting. Such a pattern, what colors? I'm sure to tell the emperor how delighted I am with it. We are pleased to hear that, the swindler said, and they proceeded to name all the colors and to explain the intricate pattern. The old minister paid the closest attention so that he could tell it all to the emperor. And so he did. He went to the emperor and told him all about it. And the swindler at once asked for more money, more silk and gold thread to get on with the weaving. But it all went into their pockets. Not a thread went onto the loom, though they worked at their weaving as hard as ever. The emperor presently sent another trustworthy official to see how the work progressed and how soon it would be ready. The same thing happened to him that had happened to the minister. He looked and he looked, but as there was nothing to see in the loom, he didn't see anything. Isn't it a beautiful piece of cloth? The swindlers asked him as they displayed and described the imaginary pattern. And the man thought, I'm not stupid. So it must be that I am unworthy of my office. That's strange. I mustn't let anyone find out, though. So he praised the material he could not see. He declared he was delighted with the beautiful colors and the exquisite patterns. So he went to the emperor and he told him, it held me spellbound. So all the town was talking about this splendid cloth, and the emperor wanted to see it for himself while it was still on the loom. So he was attended by his two trusted officials, the ones who had been to the weavers, and they set off to see the two swindlers. He found them weaving with might and main, but without a thread on their loom. Magnificent, said the two officials, already duped. Just look, your majesty, what color, what design? And they pointed to the empty loom, each supposing that the others could see the stuff. What's this, thought the emperor. I can't see anything. It's terrible. Am I a fool? Am I unfit to be the emperor? What a thing to happen to me of all people. So he said, oh, it's very pretty. Oh, it has my highest approval. And as he pointed to the loom, nothing could make him say that he couldn't see anything. So the emperor gave each of the swindlers a medal to wear around their neck and the title of Sir Weaver. Before the processions, the swindlers sat up all night and burned more than 6 candles to show off how busy they finished the emperor's new clothes. They pretended to take the cloth off the loom. They made cuts in the air with huge scissors. At least they said that. Now the emperor's new clothes are ready for him. And then the emperor himself came with his noblest noblemen, and the swindlers each raised an arm as if they were holding something. And they said, oh, these are the trousers, here's the coat, and here's the cape, naming each garment. All of them are as light as a spider web. One would almost think he had nothing on, but that's what makes them so fine. Exactly, all the noblemen agreed. They could not see anything, for there was nothing to be seen. So, if your imperial majesty will consent to take off your clothes, said the swindlers, then we will help you on with your new ones here in front of the long mirror. And the emperor undressed, and the swindlers pretended to put on his new clothes on him, one garment after another. And they took him around the waist and seemed to be fastening something. That was his train, when the emperor turned around and around before the mirror. How well your majesty new clothes look. Aren't they becoming? He heard from all sides. That pattern so perfect, those colors so suitable. It's a magnificent outfit. Then the Minister of Public Procession announced, Your Majesty's canopy is waiting outside. Well, I'm supposed to be ready, the Emperor said, and he turned again for one last look in the mirror. It is a remarkable fit, isn't it? And he seemed to regard his costume with the greatest interest. The noblemen who were carrying his cape stooped down and reached for the floor as if they were picking it up. They then pretended to lift and hold it high. They didn't dare admit that he had nothing to hold on. So off went the emperor in procession through the town under this splendid canopy. Everyone in the streets and the windows said, Oh, how fine are the emperor's new clothes. Don't they fit him to perfection? And see his long train. Nobody would confess that he couldn't see anything, for that would prove him either unfit for his procession or a fool. No costume the emperor had worn before was ever such a complete success. But then a little girl said,
What did she say?
Yeah, but he has no clothes on. Did you? And her father said, Did you ever hear such innocent gibberish? And one person whispered to another that what the child had said, He hasn't anything on. A child said so, that he hasn't anything on. And then the whole town cried out at last, But he hasn't got anything on. And the emperor shivered, for he had suspected that they were right. But he thought, this procession has to go on, and so he walked more proudly than ever as his noblemen held the train as high as they could, the train that wasn't there. The end.